The sun crept through the blinds, casting a soft golden glow over the small, humble house. Ethan Harper woke up on his couch, his body stiff and his mind groggy. It took him a moment to remember where he was. He rubbed his eyes and listened. The scent of coffee wafted through the air. Someone was in the kitchen. He turned, expecting to see Lily, his 7-year-old daughter, making her usual morning chaos. But instead, his eyes locked on a woman standing by the counter. She had wild, damp hair and was wearing his white dress shirt. She turned, her eyes catching his. "You really don't remember last night, do you?" she said, a small, almost amused smile playing on her lips. Ethan blinked, still processing the sight of her in his home. "Wait, who are you?" he stammered, trying to stand but feeling his legs betray him. The woman set the coffee cup down slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "I'm Isabel Grant, the woman whose car you saved, and whose company owns the house you're living in." Ethan froze. His heart raced. This woman, standing in his kitchen like she belonged there, wasn't just any stranger. She was someone important, someone whose life he'd saved, and yet he had no memory of her beyond that one brief, stormy night. Behind him, Lily's soft giggle echoed from the hallway, pulling his attention away from Isabel. The woman's gaze followed his, but there was something else in her eyes now, something sharp, something unreadable. "We need to talk, Ethan." Ethan stood still, his mind racing. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions, about Isabel, about why she was here, why she was wearing his shirt, but none of them made it past his lips. Instead, he watched as she took a sip of coffee, her calm demeanor belying the tension in the room. Lily appeared in the doorway, her small form stopping abruptly when she saw the stranger in the kitchen. "Who's that?" she asked, eyes wide. Isabel's gaze softened, and she crouched down to meet Lily's eyes. "Just someone your dad saved," she said, her voice warm yet distant, as if trying to strike a balance between friendliness and authority. Ethan felt a sudden rush of discomfort. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He wasn't used to having anyone in his space like this, especially not someone so clearly out of place. "Daddy, is she going to stay?" Lily asked, her innocent curiosity cutting through the tension. Ethan glanced at Isabel, who was still watching him with those knowing eyes. "No, honey, she's just here for a little while," he said, forcing a smile. Isabel straightened up, glancing briefly at Ethan before taking another sip of her coffee. "I'm not here to impose. I was just hoping to thank you properly for what you did." Her tone was steady, almost businesslike, as if she were already planning the next steps in her day. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He hadn't done it for thanks. He'd pulled her out of that wreck because it was the right thing to do, nothing more, nothing less. But here she was, sitting in his kitchen, looking perfectly put together in his shirt, while he tried to make sense of everything. "You could have left already," Ethan said, trying to mask his frustration. "Why didn't you?" Isabel's lips curled into a small smile. "I wasn't ready to leave yet. Besides, I have a driver waiting outside." Ethan blinked. "A driver?" he asked, confusion creeping into his voice. Isabel nodded, her calm composure never wavering. "Yes. He's been waiting since 6 o'clock." His mind struggled to catch up. He tried to focus on something, anything, other than the unexpected situation unfolding in his kitchen. He glanced down at Lily, who was still staring curiously at Isabel. "Go get ready for school, sweetie," Ethan said softly, trying to break the awkwardness. "Please." Lily hesitated, her eyes shifting between the two adults. "But Daddy, I want to know more about her." Isabel chuckled lightly, her voice warm. "Maybe later, little one." She gave Lily a gentle wink. Lily, ever the obedient child, nodded and disappeared into her room, leaving Ethan and Isabel alone. Ethan wiped his hands on a towel, trying to pretend everything was fine. But Isabel wasn't done yet. She reached into her purse, pulling out a thick wad of cash, and placed it down on the counter. "This should cover last night," she said, her voice neutral. The money was stacked in neat, pristine bills, at least $2,000. Ethan felt a surge of anger rise up, but he tried to keep it in check. He stared at the money, then back at Isabel. "What is this for?" "For the bed, for the clothes, for everything," Isabel replied casually, as if this was just a transaction. "You helped me. This is what people like me do. Give back when someone saves us." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I didn't do it for money," he said, his voice low and controlled. "You don't get it. I didn't help you because I wanted something in return. I helped because it was the right thing to do." Isabel's eyes flickered with something unreadable, but she didn't argue. "Fair enough," she said quietly, picking up the money and slipping it back into her purse. "It was a mistake to offer it. But I thought I was being generous." Ethan couldn't help himself. "Generosity isn't throwing cash at people," he said bitterly. "Generosity is doing what's right, even when no one's watching, and even when there's nothing in it for you." For a moment, Isabel stood silent, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed and nodded, the tension between them palpable. "I see," she said quietly. "You're right." She turned toward the door, but paused before leaving. "I won't forget you, Ethan Harper." The door clicked shut behind her, and Ethan let out a long breath. His hands trembled as he turned to find Lily standing in the hallway, watching him with wide, innocent eyes. "Is she your girlfriend now?" Lily asked, a playful glint in her eyes. Ethan froze, caught off guard. He shook his head, chuckling softly. "No, sweetheart. She's complicated." Lily smiled, her gaze softening. "I think she likes you." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What makes you say that?" "Because she looks at you the way you look at pancakes," Lily said matter-of-factly. Ethan couldn't help but laugh, the tension finally lifting. He pulled her into a tight hug, spinning her around. "You're too smart for your own good." But as he held Lily, a small part of him couldn't shake the image of Isabel's face, her words, and the lingering sense of unfinished business. He had no idea just how much his life was about to change. 3 days passed, and Ethan tried to focus on the day-to-day. He had pipes to fix, light bulbs to change, and bills that seemed to pile up faster than he could pay them. Life didn't pause just because some CEO had crashed into his world. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Isabel's face, the way she had looked at him that morning, calm and confident, like she had all the answers. It was impossible to forget her. But he did his best to push her from his mind. He had enough to worry about with Lily to focus on things that didn't concern him. He was at Zoe's school, crouched in the teacher's lounge under a sink, trying to fix a burst pipe, when the low rumble of an engine caught his attention. It was a sound that didn't belong in this neighborhood. Ethan stood up, wiped his hands on his shirt, and turned toward the parking lot. A sleek black luxury sedan rolled up, its tinted windows reflecting the morning sun like an ominous shadow. It stopped a few feet away, the engine shutting off with a soft purr. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Out stepped Isabel. Her white business suit was sharp against the dull backdrop of the school's exterior. Her heels clicked with confidence as she walked toward him, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. She moved like someone who owned the world, and yet there she was, walking straight toward him, the man who had pulled her from a burning car. Ethan stood frozen, trying to ignore the sudden rush of nerves that crept up his spine. He wiped his hands on his rag, leaving a streak of grease across the fabric. The sight of her made everything in his life feel small, insignificant in comparison. "Can I help you?" he called out, his voice rough, more defensive than he meant it to be. She stopped in front of him, removing her sunglasses. "Mr. Harper," she said, her voice smooth, yet carrying an undeniable weight. "We need to talk." Ethan felt a surge of irritation flare inside him. If this is about the money again, I told you, I don't want it. No, she said firmly, her gaze steady. It's not about that. She pulled out her phone, swiping quickly before turning the screen toward him. It was a grainy security video, time-stamped with the previous night, the night of the crash. The footage showed Ethan carrying her from the wrecked car, his face fierce and focused as he pulled her to safety. I owe you more than just money, Ethan, Isabel said, her voice quiet now, almost remorseful. You saved my life. Ethan watched the video, his heart pounding in his chest. He had barely remembered it, the adrenaline of the moment, the storm, the urgency of it all. But seeing it now, on her phone, made it feel real. And, in that moment, he realized just how much he had risked to help her. I didn't even thank you properly, Isabel continued, her tone softer, more vulnerable than he expected. Ethan shrugged, trying to downplay the weight of the situation. You already did by walking away. Her eyes darkened just a fraction. That was cold, she said, her voice holding a hint of hurt. There was a long pause. Ethan didn't want to get into this. Didn't want to let her in. But she wasn't letting go, not this time. You came back, he said quietly, turning his gaze away from her. That's more than most people would do. Isabel didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked past him, her eyes landing on Lily, who was playing on the school playground. Her face softened, and for the first time, Ethan saw something more than the composed businesswoman he had been avoiding. He saw a woman who wasn't as invulnerable as she seemed. She's your daughter? Isabel asked, her voice gentle. Ethan nodded. My whole world. Isabel studied Lily for a moment, her expression unreadable. She's lucky to have you. Ethan couldn't help but feel the sting of that. His entire life was about struggling to provide for Lily, to make sure she never felt the weight of their circumstances. But Isabel, she had everything. Everything he didn't. You're lucky to have her too, Ethan said, his voice thick. She's the only reason I keep going. The silence stretched, heavy and thick, until Isabel finally spoke again. I came here to apologize, Ethan. For everything. He turned to her, finally meeting her eyes. You don't need to apologize. You didn't ask for any of this. Isabel hesitated, her eyes flicking to Lily once more. I've spent my whole life trying to get to the top. I've built my empire, but somewhere along the way, I lost sight of the things that actually matter. The things I can't buy. Ethan's chest tightened. He knew what it was like to fight for every inch, to claw his way through life with nothing but grit and determination. But Isabel, she had money, power. She had everything, and yet she was standing here, apologizing to him. I didn't want to be reminded of it, Isabel said softly. But you did that. You reminded me that money can't buy character. It can't buy courage. It certainly can't buy the kind of man who saves a stranger in a storm. Ethan stood still, letting her words sink in. He didn't know what to say. He didn't need her pity. But maybe, just maybe, her understanding meant something. So what now? He asked, his voice rougher than he wanted. Isabel took a step closer, pulling something from her bag. It was an envelope. She handed it to him, her gaze steady, unwavering. This is for you, she said. I bought the building you're renting. The house is yours, Ethan. Free and clear. Ethan's heart stopped. He looked down at the envelope in his hand, his world spinning. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. You what? I bought it outright. It's yours. No strings attached, Isabel said, her voice resolute. Ethan's hands trembled as he tried to process her words. This isn't about debt, is it? You think kindness is something to repay? No, Isabel replied, her voice steady but soft. It's about something bigger. Something better. For you. For your daughter. For people who do the right thing and get nothing in return. The weight of her words pressed down on him. He wanted to refuse, wanted to tell her to keep her pity and walk away. But the truth was, he didn't know how to refuse. He was just a man trying to survive, and she was offering him a lifeline he wasn't sure he deserved. Ethan stood there, the envelope still in his hand, his mind reeling. He could feel the weight of Isabel's words pressing down on him like a heavy fog. He looked at the document, then back at her, his heart pounding in his chest. "This is too much," he finally said, his voice tight. "You think giving me a house will fix everything?" Isabel's gaze softened, but there was no doubt in her eyes. "It's not about fixing everything. It's about giving you something you deserve. Something better than what you've been given." He shook his head, the anger rising in his chest again. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't save you for a reward, Isabel. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And I don't need charity." "It's not charity," Isabel said, her voice steady. "It's an opportunity." Ethan turned away, his hands clenched into fists. He didn't know what to feel anymore. He had spent his whole life doing things on his own terms, surviving the way he knew how, by working hard, by giving everything to his daughter, by never asking for help. But Isabel was offering him something that went against everything he believed. A handout. Something he couldn't afford to turn down, even though his pride screamed at him to walk away. "You've spent your whole life fighting for what you have," Isabel continued, taking a step toward him. "I understand that. But sometimes you need to stop fighting long enough to let someone else help you. You've done enough. For once, let someone do something for you." Ethan's chest tightened. There was truth in her words. He had worked his entire life just to stay afloat. But could he really accept this? Could he take something so big, so personal, and let someone else pay for it? He looked at her, his eyes narrowing. "Why? Why are you doing this for me?" Isabel hesitated, her expression changing just slightly, as if she were trying to find the right words. Then, her voice dropped to a softer, almost vulnerable tone. "Because I know what it's like to feel like you're always struggling. I know what it's like to think that nothing you do will ever be enough. But you're wrong. You're enough. And I think that maybe you saved me for a reason. Maybe I was supposed to do this for you." Ethan was silent for a long time, staring at her, feeling the weight of everything that had been said. It was hard to reconcile the woman standing before him, the successful, cold CEO, with the person she had just revealed herself to be. He finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can accept this." "I'm not asking you to," Isabel said gently. "I'm asking you to think about what you deserve. Think about your daughter. Think about the future. I'm offering you the chance to stop struggling, just for a moment. To breathe." He let out a long breath, his thoughts swirling. The air between them was heavy, thick with the weight of everything unspoken. The house. The money. The offer. The complexity of their connection. He couldn't deny it. It was tempting. It was everything he had ever wanted for himself and Lily. But it felt wrong, somehow. Too much, too soon. "I'll think about it," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "But I don't know if I can accept it." Isabel nodded, her expression unreadable. She pulled the envelope from his hand gently, tucking it back into her bag. "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. But remember, Ethan, you don't always have to do it alone." With that, she turned and walked toward her car, leaving Ethan standing there in the school parking lot, his heart a jumble of emotions he couldn't sort through. Was he really going to let her help him? Was he ready to give up the pride that had kept him standing all these years? Before he could answer himself, Lily's voice broke through the silence. "Daddy, is everything okay?" she asked, looking up at him with concern. Ethan forced a smile and crouched down to her level. "Yeah, kiddo. Everything's fine." But in truth, he felt anything but fine. He didn't know what to make of Isabel's offer, of her words, of the way she had changed the course of his life in just a few short days. Isabel had left him with more than just a house. She had left him with a choice. A choice he wasn't sure he was ready to make. The day of the launch arrived, and Ethan found himself standing backstage, his hands trembling in the borrowed suit he barely fit into. The tie felt too tight, and the shoes too shiny, but this wasn't his world. He had spent his life fixing broken pipes, rewiring old houses, and making sure his daughter never went without. Now, here he was, about to step onto a stage in front of a crowd of strangers, surrounded by flashing cameras and buzzing voices. Lily was sitting beside him, her dress pretty and her braids neat, looking every bit the part of the daughter of a man who never belonged in places like this. But she was happy. She swung her legs, excitement radiating off her like a beacon. "Daddy, are you famous now?" she asked, her wide eyes full of innocence. Ethan laughed, a soft, disbelieving chuckle. "No, sweetheart. I'm just here because Isabel asked me to be." "Miss Grant." Lily's face lit up. "I like her. She's pretty." Ethan nodded but didn't reply. His mind was elsewhere. All he could think about was how everything had changed since that night. How a simple act of kindness had snowballed into something bigger than he could have imagined. The production assistant approached, holding a clipboard, looking at Ethan with barely concealed impatience. "Mr. Harper, you're up in 5. Ethan's stomach flipped. "I thought I was just attending." The assistant gave him a small smile, but there was no humor in it. "Miss Grant wants you on stage." "Didn't she tell you?" "No, she didn't." Lily giggled beside him. "You're going to be on TV, Daddy." "Thanks for the reminder, kiddo," Ethan muttered, running a hand through his hair. The lights dimmed, the music swelling as the crowd quieted. Ethan could feel the weight of every eye on him as the spotlight snapped on. Isabel walked onto the stage first, her presence commanding the room like she always did, a vision of confidence and poise. She had everyone in the palm of her hand the moment she stepped forward. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice carrying across the room, smooth and strong. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This is a special occasion, something personal for me and for all of us." The crowd applauded, cameras flashing as Isabel continued. "Tonight, we launch something that matters, something that's about more than just numbers, or dollars, or power. Tonight, we launch the Johnson Fund." A roar of applause filled the room. Ethan's heart skipped a beat at the sound of his name. He wasn't ready for this. He hadn't even been told he would be on stage, let alone be named after something as monumental as this. "This fund exists because of one man," Isabel continued, her eyes scanning the crowd. "A man who saved my life without asking for anything in return. A man who showed me that true strength isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in character." The crowd's applause grew louder, but Ethan stood frozen in the wings, his palms sweaty, his heart racing. Was she talking about him? This couldn't be real. The man she described didn't feel like someone he knew. Isabel turned toward the wings, her gaze locking with his. "Ethan Harper, please join me." Time seemed to slow as Ethan stepped forward, his legs stiff beneath him. The applause hit him like a wave, but it didn't feel real. He was a handyman, not a man meant for standing on stages, not someone deserving of this kind of attention. But he stepped into the spotlight anyway, his hands still shaking. He took the microphone Isabel handed him, his heart pounding in his chest. "You didn't warn me," he muttered. Isabel smiled softly. "I wanted it to be genuine." Ethan cleared his throat, trying to steady his nerves. The crowd was waiting. He had to say something. But what could he possibly say that could match the weight of this moment? "I'm not good at speeches," he started, his voice a little shaky. "I'm just a guy who fixes things. I fix pipes, I change light bulbs, I patch up roofs. That's what I do." There was a soft chuckle from the crowd, but Ethan pressed on. "But being a single dad, that's where I learned the most important lesson of all. You don't need money to be rich. You need people who believe in you. You need moments that remind you why you keep going." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "That night in the storm, I didn't save Isabel because I wanted recognition. I saved her because it was the right thing to do. And somehow, that one moment, just that one choice, changed everything." Ethan glanced at Isabel, and for the first time, he let himself truly see her. The woman who had walked into his life so unexpectedly. The woman who had given him something he never thought he'd deserve. He smiled, the nerves finally calming. "She could have forgotten about me, moved on with her life, and never thought twice. But she didn't. She came back. She listened. She cared." He looked out at the crowd. "And that's rare." The room was silent, hanging on every word. Ethan's voice grew stronger, more resolute. "This fund isn't about me. It's about every parent out there, doing their best. Every dad working 2 jobs. Every mom stretching every dollar. Every person who feels invisible." He paused, letting the words settle. "You're not invisible. You matter. And now you have support. Real support." The applause came, thunderous and overwhelming. Ethan stepped back, breathless. Isabel squeezed his shoulder, her smile wide and proud. "Perfect," she whispered. As the crowd continued to cheer, Ethan found himself shaking. This was real. This was bigger than anything he'd ever known. But for a moment, he didn't care about the cameras or the spotlight. He didn't care about the applause. He cared about the feeling of being seen. The feeling of being more than just a struggling dad. He was someone who had made a difference. The event wrapped up, but the buzz of excitement still lingered in the air. Ethan felt dizzy, like he was walking through a dream. The stage, the applause, the way the crowd had cheered for him, it all felt surreal. He had come from a place where every day was about scraping by, and now, in just a few short hours, his life had turned upside down. Isabel walked beside him as they made their way to the quieter hallways of the convention center. The noise of the crowd faded, but his mind was still spinning. There was a sense of finality in the air, like something was about to shift. Something important. Lily was asleep on a couch in the lobby, her head resting on a small pillow. Ethan smiled at the sight, his heart swelling with love for her. She had no idea how much her life was about to change. "You did great out there," Isabel said, her voice soft but full of admiration. "You're not just a handyman, Ethan. You're a leader. And you have a way of making people feel seen." He nodded, still in shock. He had said the right words, but he wasn't sure how much of it had sunk in yet. "I don't know if I'm ready for all this." "I know," Isabel replied. She paused, her expression shifting. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. "But I want to give you something. For everything you've done." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Another gift?" "Isabel, you've already given me more than enough." She smiled, a little wry. "I know you don't like accepting help, but this is different. This isn't charity. This is for you." He took the box, his hands trembling slightly as he opened it. Inside, nestled in soft velvet, was a pen. But it wasn't just any pen. It was engraved with a simple inscription, "For the man who didn't sell his kindness." Ethan's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. He ran his fingers over the smooth metal, the words etched into it like a reminder of everything he had sacrificed to stay true to himself. "You didn't have to do this," he whispered. Isabel stepped closer, her voice quieter now. "I know, but I wanted to. You changed my life, Ethan. You reminded me that kindness is the greatest currency. That integrity is worth more than any deal." He swallowed hard, the emotion in his chest thickening. He didn't know how to process everything she was saying. The house, the foundation, the moments they had shared. Isabel had started as a stranger, a woman he'd pulled from a burning car. Now, she was something more. Something he hadn't expected. Ethan stood there, still holding the pen. The weight of the moment was heavy, pressing down on him like a storm cloud. He wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. How could he ever thank her for everything she had done? For giving him a future he never thought he deserved? Isabel took a deep breath, her eyes searching his. "Ethan, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About integrity. About kindness. And I've realized something." He looked at her, waiting. "I don't want to do this alone," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't imagine my life without you. Without Lily. Without the man who taught me what real strength is." Ethan's heart raced as her words sunk in. "What are you saying?" Isabel looked down for a moment, her hands shaking slightly. "I'm asking you to be with me, to build something with me, together. I want you in my life, Ethan. I want you to be part of something bigger than either of us." She pulled out another envelope from her bag. He could see the legal paper inside. His name was on it. The Johnson Fund. His name had been used to create a foundation to help other families, just like his. Just like their community. Isabel paused, her eyes steady. "I'm launching a new project, a fund for single parents. You're the face of it. Your name, your story, your values. I want you to guide this, to make sure it's about real help, not just PR. And I want you by my side." The envelope trembled in his hand. He could barely process it. But as he looked at Isabel, really looked at her, he realized that she wasn't just offering him a partnership in business. She was offering him something more, a future. A future they could build together. And then she did something that shook him to his core. She stepped closer, her hand resting on his chest. "Ethan, will you marry me?" He blinked, stunned by the simplicity of her question, the raw vulnerability in her voice. His world spun around him. This was it. The moment where everything changed. He had spent his whole life telling himself he didn't deserve this. That he didn't deserve anything more than the quiet, hard-fought life he had built. But here she was, asking him to be a part of hers. He smiled, a soft laugh escaping his lips. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will." Isabel's face lit up, and for the first time, Ethan saw her completely. The woman who had clawed her way to the top, the woman who had everything, but still didn't have the one thing that truly mattered. She was looking at him, not with gratitude or pity, but with love. "You don't know what this means," Isabel said, her eyes shining. "I think I do," Ethan replied, pulling her close. "You just made me the luckiest man alive." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Ethan realized something that changed everything. It wasn't about the house, the foundation, or even the money. It was about this, about the love they had found, unexpectedly, in the middle of a storm. Isabel kissed him softly, her lips warm against his. And in that moment, he knew their story wasn't over. It was just beginning.